Word. And I will say a proper welcome. So you are here for Networks in Action about network operations. I'm Kirsten Tebby. I'm the founder of Collective Mind, and I have my phenomenal colleague Seema here too, Seema Patel. So pleased to always be in a space with her. Perhaps we do just really brief introduction since it's such a small group. I don't know if Tony, if you'd want to just say hi, sort of where you are in the world today, what your network is, what brings you here perhaps to this topic.
I can start. My name is Amina and I am in Brooklyn. I am a program coordinator at a nonprofit that is headquartered in New York, but it's an international nonprofit. We a larger organization, the Jewish Distribution, and they provide relief and aid to Jewish communities and other communities all across the world. That's a global Jewish 911. And then a smaller org of that is Entwine, which is where I work, and we provide transformational experiences such as trips, events, and programs to young professionals. And my senior manager, like our executive director of the engagement team, she sent me this link and so I think this might be something you would like. But I was free this morning, so let me just see what it's about.
Great, thanks, Amina.
Good morning, folks. My name is Tony. I am the senior manager at the Open Gov Hub, a nonprofit co-working and event space in Washington, D.C. that caters to and focuses on working with other nonprofits in the civic participation, transparency, and accountability sector. In short, we're just trying to open up transparency in government and further the missions of our organizations in the co-working space. I am very interested in getting better at communicating with my other members and helping them and helping their missions along. So this is the type of course and type of feedback that is essential in becoming more efficient and more effective in communicating with them. So you're very brave to just click a link and jump into this call, Amina, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the course today.
Great, thanks to you both. So let's get started. We just a short word on Collective Mind. So Collective Mind is focused on networks. Our mission is to support networks and the people who work for and with networks to be more effective and impactful. So we run sessions like this within our learning community. Lots of free and open opportunities to learn more about what it means to be a network manager and leader. These networks in action sessions happen every other month. And we rotate them with a session called Needs and Leads, which is about peer support and sharing your needs and getting support on those from others in the space. And we also have introductions to networks and to network management that we run every month that give you a little bit of insight into how we think about those topics. We also work directly with networks as advisors, as consultants. We work with network clients all around the world who are working at every scale from local to global on a huge range of issues, a smattering of which we hear in this space today, which is great. So happy to have you both here. If you'd like to, we already did some check-ins here, but we usually use these slides to have folks check in and just say hello. We don't have to do that today. Let's move down. So slide 5, you see our agenda. So the way that we run these sessions is that we use a methodology called What, So What, Now What. It is from Liberating Structures, which is a set of methodologies around facilitation. And we've tweaked it a little bit for our purposes for the framework here. But we work through those 3 questions related to the topic in order to unpack this topic, whatever is the topic at hand, which of course today is network operations. And we start these sessions before moving into those questions and discussion about them. We start these sessions with an overview of what folks replied in their responses to the registration questions. So we're trying to capture some knowledge through that, share it back here in these sessions, and use it as the prompts and the foundations for discussion in the session itself. So just a little overview. You may recall from the signups, there were a few different questions that you responded to when you registered. So you see on slide 6, responses to this first question. So we asked everyone what their network's operational setup was. And you can see there's quite a range. People working with staff, with volunteers, different kinds of structures, working with a different consulting firm or management firm, supporting clients, just a really wide range, which is what we see typically anyway. So that's perhaps not surprising. When you move to the next slide, number 7, we asked what operational challenges you struggle with. And these were the responses in terms of what folks responded to and listed in order of receiving the most responses. So top of the list seemed to be a few things. So knowledge management, communications, which was mentioned here already, and IT or digital infrastructure were really the top. But there were a range here. And we'll be interested to hear kind of where you all stand specifically on these points. And then the final question on slide 8, we asked, how do you currently meet your operational challenges? And again, there's a really wide range here. So people noted that time is a challenge. They talked about trying to outsource or find other workarounds, just testing things and learning from their tests and experiments, doing learning themselves through professional or organizational development. A really wide range of things again here. We when we run these sessions, we try to create or synthesize these responses into sort of themes, and this time it was really broad. So it's not easy to sort of create some themes and topical threads here. So it'll be interesting to discuss this more. Hello, welcome. We're
Hi.
just getting started.
Oh, good. It told me the meeting was canceled. I didn't know
Oh,
what to make of that.
no, we are here
All right.
and happy to have you. We are using this shared slide deck, and we're just kicking off our conversation. So we're here in Networks in Action on network operations. If you are able to open that slide deck, you can scroll down and see a little bit of background information on slides 6 through 8. We were just going through this. We always capture in these sessions the synthesis or the compilation really of what the registrants responded to in the question, and use that as the foundation for our conversation going forward. So we have those responses listed out in slides 6 through 8. And we're just about to get started. So again, our format here is to go through a series of questions. So we talk about the what, the so what, and the now what. So the what is definitions. What is it that we're talking about? What is this topic? How do we define it? And in this case, of course, it's network operations. And then once we do a little bit of discussion on that, we talk about the so what, which is what are the implications? What does this mean to us? Our definition of this topic. And then finally, we talk about the now what. So based on our discussions, based on how we define this and the implications for it, where do we go from here? Are there things to take forward? Are there opportunities to improve our own work and our networks? What does this mean for us? So that's the frame for our conversation. And typically we have a very small group today. Typically we break out into groups for these conversations, and work in pairs or groups of 3. So I wonder if we should just stay here in the same room, or if we send the 3 of you off to have your separate
Yeah.
conversation.
Let's just stay together.
Yeah. So, all right, let's jump in here then. So our first question is the what. And I will take some notes here. We always try to capture the knowledge that's coming out of these sessions. So I'll take some notes here down in slide 10. But how do we define this? How do we define this topic of network operations? That's our first big question here. What is it that we're talking about? So over to you all.
So now what is it you want from us though?
So we're talking through, if you look onto slide 5, we're working our way through the questions, the what, so what, now what, that is the framework for this discussion. So we're starting off with this question of what. So what is it that we mean by network operations? What does this mean to us?
Well, we did a session on networks a couple months ago on my job, and we dived into like the different kinds of networks, but I can't really remember what they were. So a refresher would be great on what different types of networks are. I just know network operations to me sounds like within each network how they operate and how they break down and what functions they have. But a refresher on what the different types of networks are and what the networks are would be great.
Great, thanks. Other thoughts about what we mean by network operations?
I came to it because I want to know what that is.
Gotcha.
Well, I think I think you kind of nailed it in that it's, you know, as silly as it sounds, it's how a network operates, and so that can be defined in different ways for different parameters of the network. But I would think, you know, something as simple as, you know, how a particular network communicates within its network. That's part of the operations, or how a network recruits into its network. Would be another facet of its operation. So I think there's probably a few different answers to this question, but I think that's probably where what we're looking for in operations. Does that sound on the right track?
That's great, Tony. Yeah. And
Yeah.
perhaps the slide 7 really helps us as well when we're thinking about what these different components are of operations. As Tony, you were getting at some of them with what you mentioned in terms of recruitment, communications, things of that sort. So just looking at this slide, number 7, how does this resonate with folks?
Well, I know for me that it's definitely that's the heart of the operations of a network, and it's funny that it's in that particular order because I very similarly have those types of priorities in our networks as well. So it's odd and almost reassuring to see that other folks are having these similar challenges in their networks, especially in that same order. So it definitely resonates.
I wonder if there's anything. Oh, sorry, Seema, were you gonna?
Yeah, sorry, can you hear
Please.
me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Now
Yeah.
I can.
No, it was just my reflection when looking at these responses was I imagine that these are struggles, all of these are struggles for networks and writ large. I was kind of surprised that fundraising and donor management maybe was not in the top three. We had asked participants to sort of let us know what their top three were. And I think that that says something. I think that there's a stewardship and a responsibility that network backbones and like the network leadership really feels to make sure that they're sort of honoring and giving the resources that their network writ large and their network members need. So this idea of knowledge management and communications being on the forefront of what a lot of network leaders are trying to provide and what they struggle with in terms of network operations, I thought that was very interesting and insightful.
It's funny you said that because I was thinking the same thing in regards to donations, but I also thought about it as right. I think we touched on this in the past. Is who are we asking this question to? Because if you're asking us this question, maybe we're not directly responsible for donations and whatnot. So maybe that's why that isn't higher up on the spectrum for us specifically. But in general, I would have thought every nonprofit, anyone associated with a nonprofit, would have thought donations and fundraising would be of high priority. But maybe times are good right now.
Yeah, Tony, just building off that, I think it is interesting to reflect on who responded. I mean, whoever signed up, right, responded to this, but depending on your position within a network, you're a member, you're perhaps on staff or a network manager, or you're on a governing body, or whatever your role might be in a network, you probably have a different perspective on this, right? And so it's also maybe interesting to think about number 7 in the points that are on slide 7, and that that sort of ranking of those components of operational challenges in the context of slide 6 and the networks, you know, what people said about their network's operational setup, that there was such a range, right? And this is just taking a small sample from the folks who registered for this session, but there's such a range in terms of how networks are set up, are organized. And then we see certain challenges coming out of that. So I wonder what the kind of connection is there to the setup and the challenges, and also to where you sit within a network based on then what you see are the challenges or the needs.
I would agree with that for sure. I apologize. I'm still getting over a cold, so I apologize for the coffee and the sneezing in between my responses. But yeah, I would agree completely. It really depends on the position you have in the organization when answering these questions. But I know for me, for sure, especially in managing our networks, communication and knowledge management is a really big one. I guess I shouldn't be shocked that it's number 1, but for us, it's been very a continuing challenge to be able to share information within the network, get information from one side of the network to the other side of the network, or even expand the network. So yeah, I know it's a challenge for me, but maybe if you would ask someone in fundraising, they wouldn't have a clue that that's a challenge. So that does make some sense.
Yeah, and it's just, I'm really enjoying this. It's making me think too that these top 3, the knowledge management, the communications, and we could say also the IT and digital infrastructure, at least to some extent, are really the sort of network facing side of things, right? It's, as you were saying, Tony, it's the how do you get information across the network, right? From one part to another, sharing knowledge, sharing information, making sure everyone's on the same page, they're connected to one another. And so that's the knowledge management and communications. And then we see the IT and digital infrastructure. I'm not sure what people exactly meant when they put that, but you could consider it the tools and platforms for doing that, right? For doing the knowledge management and the communications. So in that view, then the top challenges here are all around how do you foster those connections and that information sharing and such within the network, right? And then you could potentially just keep going on this thought. You could potentially see the ones below that. Network administration, again, not sure how people interpreted that, but you could look to some of these below around human resources, fundraising, legal infrastructure, accounting, etc., as really the sort of organizational pieces, right? So there's the network components around knowledge management and communications and the tools and platforms to do that. And then these other pieces, these other challenges are really the kind of organizational side. How do you set up and manage and sustain an organization, right? Which in a network's case would be the backbone or whatever other sort of network management structure you might have in place. But that's more kind of internally focused on a sort of infrastructure side, right? We could say, spinning off a little bit there, but interested if people have thoughts.
Well, I'm kind of curious about how do really networks that really function well. For instance, the network that we are trying to pull together about mutual aid is, it's different groups who have not worked, who know each other but have not worked together before, and they are, there's not really anybody to do most of those things or to focus on that. People are working on their own projects, and there's not really anybody who could do those things for this network. And I don't know how other networks actually get that. Do you have to hire somebody a staff person who can take on some of those responsibilities?
Yeah, good questions. And I think in some ways we're moving sort of past this first question of the what and into the so what. So what are the implications of this to this question, Gladys? Do you need staff? Like, do you need somebody dedicated? Do you need a dedicated capacity of some sort to ensure these things, to make sure that operations happen?
Yeah.
Which has a host of other implications, right? If you have staff, you need money, you need systems, you need tools, you need hiring, you need all of these other things, right? So it changes the game for a volunteer network.
Yeah, and I kind of thought when we first started talking about this network, I really kind of felt like our organization could do some of the, keep records in our database, or something like that. But it seems to be a little more complex than that. And then how do you share it over the network if one organization has it? And I don't really know how to do that. I don't have the technical capacity to actually do that for this network.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the challenges. So there's an option here within networks of having them hosted, right? Sorry, there's really loud something going on outside. I don't know if you can hear that. But you can have your network hosted, right, by another organization, one of the members of the network, that sort of thing. Lots of variations on that kind of theme. But that brings its other challenges, right? So if everything is hosted within one organization, even with the best of intentions, there can, bottlenecks can be created. Things of that sort. What's the accountability there? So it raises other questions.
I can definitely speak to being in the same boat, in that you have this network that you're trying to bring together, but if without someone or some entity kind of stepping up to do some of that backbreaking work, some of the actual bringing together work, some of the actual managing the database type work and sharing that database type work, it becomes a challenge. And you're not the only one in this in this type of boat, Gladys. I have a network as well of 70 organizations, and everybody means well individually. However, when it comes down to the nitty gritty time to maybe come together and get some stuff done, it's very, very difficult. It's kind of like probably similar to, I don't know, like wrangling up cats or something like that. You know, it's a challenge. But I will say that trying to bring them together little by little through either like a mail list to keep people up to date on doings that are transpiring, and maybe like small movements like that, and then really figuring out truly who are the not just the individuals that have the knowledge base that that can be shared, but the individuals that have some capacity, that may have some extra time that they can donate to this particular part of the cause, and kind of focusing there and working with those individuals, right? Because talking to everyone may not get the job done, but maybe targeting certain individuals might.
That's really helpful, Tony. Thank you. Appreciate that.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Tony. Didn't mean to interrupt you. It raises for me this question of where the capacity is within the network that can be leveraged, right? Where is it? What does it look like? Does it already exist? Can we access the capacity we need within the network as it stands? Or do we have to go outside of it, right? Which then gets into questions around hosting or staffing or outsourcing, and what that looks like.
Could you talk about what hosting is?
Yes, absolutely. So I think it can take a lot of forms. So hosting, when I think about hosting, I think about it as, for example, so Gladys, not knowing really anything about your network, but so say you have a volunteer network, and you need some support, you need some structures, you need some systems, you need somebody to maybe receive funding for you because you're not a legal entity, right? Or you need somebody to hire a part-time staff or full-time staff or something like this. So a host some organization would step up and say, yes, we can host you, and we can run the money for you, we can do the hiring for you and manage the HR and things of that sort, right? And be that sort of, you could call it a backbone, the sort of internal operations, whatever it might be, but doing that kind of hosting where some sort of organization steps up to be kind of the legal, fiscal, kind of other operational home to the network. I've seen this as well, even in the network I worked for many years, that hosting, it was hosted, it was not, it was a global network, it was not a legal entity of its own. So but it had a number of staff all around the world, and those staff were hired by different organizations. And so those organizations, there were like 3 or 4 of them, I think, at one time, that were hiring staff. And so different funding for the network was being run basically through those different organizations, and they hired staff, they provided different, again, this sort of operational support. What does it entail when you hire a staff person for something else? You have to do the HR, you have to do some IT, some systems, some structures, things of this sort, right? So that was the hosting arrangement that the network that I worked for had, where it was multiple hosts, and money was channeled through different hosts, and they were hiring staff and providing various support. It becomes very tricky. Yeah, because for lots of reasons, for lots of operational reasons, for lots of sort of financial and fiscal reasons. Just with that example, some of the challenges were staff were on different salary structures because different organizations had different policies, right? Different hiring procedures, different then ultimate different overheads for money that was coming in, right? That they took, you know, this organization had this overhead and they took this amount, and another organization had this other overhead, took that amount. Different HR systems, different IT systems, different, you know, all of those things. And ultimately, also legally, those organizations, the staff are legally bound to those organizations, not to the network that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a real gray area, and it kind of works till it doesn't. And hopefully it just works. but there can be hiccups.
Did it work? Did it continue to work for them?
There were hiccups, but
Hiccups, okay.
yes.
Okay. But not
Generally.
fatal hiccups.
Sorry?
Not fatal hiccups.
No, what was the word before hiccup?
Fatal.
Fatal. No, not fatal.
It didn't damage the network.
No, nothing was fatal. Nothing was fatal. Yeah. But you know, there can also be conflicts of interest, right? An organization is hiring a staff person for the network, but the network doesn't exist. So who is that staff person really reporting to? It's the organization, and they're, you know, it's the goodwill of the organization that is allowing that staff person to do other work, right? So it can be very complicated. That's a specific, you know, specific scenario, but yeah. So when I think about hosting, that's what I think about. I think about when a network has a home operationally within another organization that is willing to do that, right? And there is a big contribution on the side of that organization, right? To be willing to do those things. So yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Networks are never easy.
Yeah.
Is the sort of answer to that question.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it's hosting is a little bit like a fiscal sponsorship for a network. It's kind of what you're thinking.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't have to. I think fiscal sponsorship can be even a little more specific in the sense of this is my assumption that fiscal sponsors, by having the legal and fiduciary sort of responsibilities, they do have there is some accountability from the network and such, but my understanding of fiscal sponsors is they are less involved in the actual running of the network, the functioning of the network, the goals of the network. So hosting, so you could have a fiscal sponsor that's not at all involved in the network, right? Okay. Whereas the other hosting arrangement that I was giving an example of, those organizations that were hosting were all members of the network.
Got it.
So that has a whole other range of implications, right? Who has power? Who has, you know, all these different things.
Yeah.
We step up to host someone, but then we get money from that because we get the overheads, but we're contributing a lot because we're hosting and we're offering our time and our space and our systems and structure. So there's a lot.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not getting answers here, Gladys. You're getting more questions. Sorry.
Well, Tony, do you mind talking about the network you have? It seems really helpful to me to kind of hear how another network does some of these things. And you know, yours, the global network with all that independent groups, I could relate to that in some ways, but it's very different than what I have here before me. And but it's really helpful kind of hearing how these things really get done. And Tony, I wonder if there's any insights you have from your network.
Sure, Kirsten, would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Sure. So I think a little different from maybe some of the other previous examples is that we are an entity. So we exist as a nonprofit. And so basically we are a nonprofit co-working space that caters to other nonprofits. So my network is over 70 other nonprofit organizations both physically and virtually members of our co-working space. And so our challenge is bringing these nonprofits together collectively to kind of use their collective know-how, experience, and whatnot to help each other and make each other more efficient and more effective. And so that was the goal 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, when our organization was founded. Basically, just bring more nonprofits together in the civic transparency, accountability, and civic participation sector to open up government. And so that continues to be the goal. So how do we connect these organizations in a lot of the work that they're doing and a lot of the similar work that they're doing, and to help each other out and to work on the same projects and to create those efficiencies. And, you know, bottom line is to help them save money so they can put more money into their actual programs and projects and whatnot. So like I said, the way we do that is a few different ways. We have newsletters, we have monthly newsletters, we have weekly newsletters, we have our Slack channels so that all the organizations are in one place that can connect and communicate almost instantaneously. And then we have different events that bring them together, etc. So lots of different ways to try to connect them. Now, whether they all work or not is up for debate and probably a different conversation. But yeah, those are some of the tools that we try to implement to bring them together.
Tony, are you like a geographically closer than the global network that Christian was talking about?
Well, I mean, we are, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of our organizations are, they do work globally, but they are based out of the US. And so they may do a lot of work overseas and in the global South, but physically they are based in the US, and most of them are based in the Washington, DC area, which is where our offices are. So I'll tell you right now, it's a lot easier to get people to work together and network together if they're all in the same physical space than it is to get them to work virtually together. That we've learned the hard way over the pandemic, but it's not impossible. And I definitely think that when you have the right mission or the right goal in mind that caters or that targets the right folks, like they will come together. So if it's a mission that everyone is in agreement with or behind, that's kind of how you get that first crack step in the door to bring them together.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful.
Gladys, did you want to share anything more about what you're struggling with?
Well, as Tony was talking about that, I think we really, this is a new group. I've been thinking about networks for several years now, but we've only started trying to pull it together. We kind of started a meals program at the beginning of COVID, and it just seemed to me like what was going on was not really, none of the groups that were working on different things were really working really well. So we started talking about doing this network. We really haven't, I believe we really need to refine the mission for this group. And I think that for one thing, we don't really know what we actually agree on. It's a pretty diverse group of groups, churches and things like that, and nonprofits and the food bank and different things that they all have their own directions and functioning of themselves. And it kind of seems like we really need to be thinking a little bit more about what it is we are doing together, and that might help us a whole lot.
Absolutely. That, of course, is not an easy task, but yes, it's a really, really important one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to somewhat keep to our structure here, just to go to this last question. So again, we worked through this structure of the what, the so what, and the now what. So the what was our definition. What is it that we're talking about? The so what is, what are those implications then? What are we struggling with or trying to do or do differently or better? And then the now what? So what do we take away from this? Where do we go from here? Any thoughts
Refine the mission.
on the mission? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. It's key to everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And better communications tools. I think I really need help with that. I'm just going to have to start looking for people within our group that really are more capable of doing some of these things than I
Hmm.
am. Just, it's not something that I can really just. I need help. Yeah, I need help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's great. Not a lot of folks realize that they can't do everything by themselves. And I know that's one of my biggest problems as well.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. You need to find the right folks that can give you the assistance you need. And you shouldn't be expected to know how to do everything or to do everything. That's not the point of the
Mhm.
network. The point of a network is for everyone to come together for the greater good, not just one person bringing everyone together to do everything for everyone else, and that's a very, very big difference. So yeah, so please, you'll have our contact information and my contact information. If you ever have any specific questions, I'll be happy to kind of address anything else for you, after this call and whatnot. That's the whole point of Collective Mind, is to bring us all together so we can help each other out. So I'll be more than happy.
Yeah.
to
Thank
assist.
you, Tony. I really appreciate that.
Tony is a regular in this community, and we so appreciate him.
I can see you offer a lot, Tony. Appreciate that. So do you, Kristen.
Oh, thanks.
That was a really, really helpful kind of overview. And we didn't get through all the slides, but I am going to review that and kind of see what other gems are in there, because several of those were really, really helpful.
Good. Yes. And I would suggest too, so we do a lot of different regular sessions, and this Networks in Action, which are our thematic sessions, happen every other month, but we rotate them with another series called Needs and Leads. So it is just a peer exchange and support session where you come and you say, I'm struggling with this. Who can help me? Do you have any ideas? So here's my need. What are the leads? Do you have ideas? Do you have contacts? Do you have resources, tools, whatever it might be? So maybe coming to one or more needs and leads sessions would be useful for you as well. So
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, of course. Happy to see you again. Well, I think we can just leave it there. This for a really small group ended up being a fascinating conversation. I had a great time.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you guys, but I had a great time. So I'm so pleased to see you all. Thank you for being here. We will also, as we always do for these sessions, we'll write up a summary blog of kind of key ideas that come out of the session. So look for that in the new year in our newsletter. And yeah, hope to see you all again very soon. In the meantime, I hope the end of the year gives you some rest, some relaxation, some joy, some fun, and we all go into the new year refreshed. So wishing you all the best.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you very
Thanks
much, all. I
everybody.
appreciate it.
Likewise. See you all soon.
Happy New
Okay.
Year, happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.